Thank you so much for joining us again. We're so excited. I'm Grace. I am with Ep.2 and I talk about all things workplace, mental health, emotional wellness in the workplace. And this is Lynn.
Yay! Hi, my name's Arlene from Roots to Fruits. Roots to Fruits is a financial well-being platform. It aims to empower people to look after their finances and kind of highlighting the link between finances and your overall mental health. So happy to be here, episode 2.
And our topic today is loneliness. And the reason we have decided to talk about loneliness is because of one, being it's an important topic to talk about, and two, it is the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week, which is actually running from 9th of May for that whole week. So I'm sure in your workplaces you will be talking about Mental Health Awareness Week, talking about loneliness. So we just felt it's appropriate to have this conversation. It's a good time to bring it up. So let's get into loneliness.
Yeah.
So loneliness, I guess it would be nice to define loneliness in our own, I guess. What do you think loneliness is?
Yeah, so I think how I would define loneliness will be more not being able to relate to anyone around you. It's not necessarily that you are alone. It's more that in whatever situation that you're in, perhaps you can't communicate effectively with the people around you. You probably don't feel heard. You don't feel seen. You don't feel valued, respected. I think that's when you feel lonely, rather than being alone.
Yeah, no, I like that as well. I think I would agree. Definitely, it's not about the physical, although sometimes it can be physical loneliness, being away from people, completely, working on your own, living on your own. Sometimes that can be loneliness, but again, like you said, being in a state where you feel disconnected from what's going on around you, disconnected from your external world, that can leave you feeling very lonely. So I think that's we'll use that definition. I think it's feeling disconnected, essentially, from what's going on around you. Interesting stats, and why it's so important to talk about it. So the Office of National Statistics actually found that 3.7 million adults reported feeling lonely quite often or always, and this actually increased by 1.1 million since the previous year. So I'm guessing this would have been during the pandemic year, and then the second year of the pandemic it increased by 1.1 million people. So
that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. What's your take on that in terms of pandemic, loneliness? Any experiences of loneliness, not yours specifically, but people that you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I can really relate to why so many people would have felt more lonely during that period, especially because we went from being so social. I think in a week I would have, before lockdowns and everything, I would have been going to work 5 days a week, and I would have been going to some sort of gym class. So it wasn't just going to the gym on my own and just working out and there's people around me. It was more like a gym class, so I would have friends that I'm interacting with there, went for drinks, some sort of party, some sort of get together once a week, going to church and going to, there was so much that would happen in a week where I would interact with so many people, and then it went to flipped. You're now in your own house with just a handful of people if you were lucky, but a lot of people would have been actually on their own, secluded. And it's not just that. I think it was that everyone's now trying to deal with the situation that's at hand, which is we're in a lockdown and the world's just been shaken up. So I don't think there was anyone that you could lean on more than anything, because we're all going through it. So it was just such a strange time, and I'm someone that likes to deal with things internally. Let's think about it, write about it, I'll go on walks for 2 hours on my own. So in terms of did I feel lonely because of the situation. I think I just felt like it was an out of body experience. I was just so shaken up and didn't know how much to relate to other people because everybody was affected in different ways. So yeah, it's a roundabout way of saying yes but no, because we were all going through the same thing, but yes because we went from being so social to just seeing three people all the time.
It's true.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by choice. It was almost
Exactly.
This is what you have to do. This is your reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was a bit more difficult, because it's not like actually tomorrow I can just go out and just hang out with my family.
Yeah.
It's family, it's friends. You can't see people that you normally see. So I can see how that can feel. I always described it as grief, because it's almost like a loss in itself. You lose community, you lose it to some degree. Yes, you can still call family, you can still call friends, FaceTime became, a big thing, Zoom, family, family Zoom calls. Like I remember we started doing family Zoom calls. More interestingly though, just to flip that, we actually started speaking more frequently.
Yeah, talking to each other
Yeah.
more rather than I'll see you at the birthday party. It'll
Exactly.
be just
Yeah, we felt, family around the world. We're actually all joining Zoom calls. But again, it's still that as much as we can have the connection via a screen, it's not always the same. I think there's always going to be that need for that, physical, let me see you, let me hug you, let me high five you, anything, it definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And on that, so it would have been like you're not getting the connection from your usual workplace and everything else that you would have done. So you're seeking it elsewhere, but rightfully, thank God, there's family to then connect with as well in that sense. So yeah, well, that's a good thing that came out of the pandemic, getting closer to certain people, people that matter. So
definitely, always a positive.
Yes.
Always a positive. So something else you touched on it when you were kind of defining loneliness was the difference between how somebody can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. I think that's quite important to talk about, because I think some people think it's something that people might want to understand more, and something that people might query and say, what do you mean by that? So I know you've already kind of gone into it a little bit, but do you have more to say on that? Because I think that's quite important to kind of highlight.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think there's kind of like the old way of thinking of alone and lonely. We've always maybe associated them to be the same thing. So when maybe people see someone eating a dinner on their own, you might think, oh, they must be lonely. But no, they're just alone, and perhaps they just want to be in their own company and they enjoy their own company. Whereas if someone, even in a party, sitting a group of 8 people on a table, but not feeling seen or heard, they might be the one that feels lonely. So I think that's a key thing, and perhaps why quite a lot of people feel lonely, I guess, and it's just because they don't have someone to relate to. So in terms of just having that distinction, understanding it, so then maybe there is someone that's watching that's like, actually I feel like I am alone, or I feel like I am lonely, even though they're literally sitting in a room with people. Then it's something to just kind of understand and then seek out the right people that can make you feel seen and heard, to address that.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
There's actually an interesting study which was done, and this lady, I wouldn't call it a study, but she spoke about how you could be in Times Square, or you can be London Trafalgar Square, where there's going to be hundreds of people, and you can still feel the loneliest. Or you could be a patient in a hospital with loads of other patients around you, nurses, doctors, whatever, and still feel terribly lonely. And the way she was able to describe it was almost like saying, relationships, for you to feel connected to somebody, it has to be a two-way relationship. So it's almost like I'm giving you something and you're giving me something back. So it's a mutual exchange. So if you're in a situation where you're not really giving anything to anybody in Trafalgar Square, no one cares about you because they don't know you. No one wants to give you, to say no one cares is a bit strong, but something along, they're not interested in what you're doing because they're there with their family, their friends, they're doing their thing. You're not, really interested in them because you don't know them. So there's no exchange there. And that's where the disconnect comes in.
Yeah.
So you want to feel like there's a mutual exchange. And then maybe again in friendships or relationships, you might feel lonely because that mutual exchange isn't there.
Yes.
It's almost like you're giving something, but you're not feeling that you're getting something back. And that can leave you feeling quite isolated and lonely in relationships. So what would you advise, I guess, with that?
With that, I think it's just, first of all, recognize it, because that's a key thing. A lot of us maybe are not good at kind of assessing our emotions, assessing how we feel, recognizing that, oh, this is why I might be feeling a bit off, and it's because I feel lonely, even though I'm in this situation, and as you said, I'm not getting this from the other person. First of all, assess and then communicate. I think with everything, ultimately, it's down to communication. So maybe try to voice that to whoever is around you, that you're feeling alone. And there's so many resources as well. If maybe the people around you, if they just don't get it, then there's so many resources, like, talking to someone like BetterHelp, for example, or there's so many resources where you can find the right person to speak to. Okay,
I am gonna push a little further because you're on such a good line, and I think it's important that we said no bounds. Well, nothing is off bounds, and I think it's important to go that bit deeper. So you could be in a situation where you're not feeling connected, you're feeling lonely, you want to communicate that, but you're not a great communicator, or you don't know where to start. Give me a line. What can I say if I'm not somebody who's comfortable and confident communicating? I don't want to hurt people's feelings, or maybe I don't like saying things out loud. What are kind of like key ways to start, or conversation starters, or ways to express myself?
I think if it's not in words, it could be in actions. People communicate in different ways. So if it could be in an action, if it could even be in, I don't know, writing a letter. If you find it easier to put pen to paper, or ask someone to go do as an activity where it relaxes you, it relaxes them, then maybe that's the best time to open up. So there's loads of ways to try and tap into it. I know it's really hard then if you don't feel like you want to open up, to then open up. There's essentially no easier way of saying you're gonna have to be the one that fesses up and says it, but you just have to be brave to open up and say whatever's going on in that situation to the person, or the right person. So as you're saying, if someone's not used to talking and they feel like, I really don't want to, but you have to because you're feeling down, because you're lonely, then you just have to be brave and just do it. I don't think there's any other way of getting out of it than just saying it, but finding the right ways to, putting yourself in a good situation where you can open up to the right person as well.
Yeah, because I guess the outcome is better than continuing to feel that state of loneliness, isn't it? Essentially.
Because it could lead to serious stuff, because we're talking about wellness. It could lead to depression. It could lead to, serious situations that are harder to come out of than if you try and address it when it's maybe in first stages of feeling lonely. So
true. I think that's really important to highlight. Being able to address it early, basically. Okay, so that was really, really good. Some really important things you highlighted there, I think. So again, I think it's good to switch it a little bit. We are talking about loneliness, but again, we had mentioned the other side of it is there's also solitude. or choosing to be alone. And I think, again, Lynn, you kind of touched on that and said, you know, you can see somebody in a restaurant sitting, having a meal by themselves. It doesn't mean that they're lonely. They might be just choosing to have a meal by themselves and be alone. So I guess it's good to highlight the differences between loneliness and solitude. So here we have loneliness is more about isolation, whereas solitude is about, you know, personal time alone. Loneliness is normally involuntary, usually, so it's not something you choose, it's something that happens to you, whereas solitude is voluntary. It's something you decide, you say, I want to be by myself. Right. And then loneliness usually evokes feelings of anxiety, rejection, emptiness, and sadness, whereas solitude should evoke feelings of calm, feeling connected to yourself, kind of more introspective, and then feeling recharged or reset. So I think it's good to highlight that. So if you are on your own or choosing to be alone, I wouldn't say, you know, don't question it and think, oh, you know, there must be I must be lonely. Maybe you are just choosing to be which I think is necessary. I think sometimes, because we do need to recharge. Some people do need to just recharge, be with themselves. So
and connect. And maybe it's like you just need some thinking time, and that is that time that you're recharging, as you said. So it's necessary for, I think, most people to be able to be on your own with your own thoughts.
Exactly. And again, pushing a little bit, I think some people worry about that. I think this is based on kind of experience, working with people, and you know, some people do genuinely fear being alone.
Like they're too comfortable being alone, or fear actually being on their own, like I don't want to be on my own.
Ooh, I think you can both ways, really. I think too comfortable being on their own, I think maybe that can be a bit worrying as well, because it's almost like we need human connection. We are social beings. And then I would say there must be something a little bit deeper going on if somebody doesn't want to be around people. Maybe they are depressed, or maybe they are quite low mood. It's usually an indicator of, you know, low mood if you don't want to be around people, or anxiety. But then on the other side, it's, you know, I don't want to be on my own. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts. If I'm alone, I have to play music, or I have to put something on just to have background noise so I don't feel so alone. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that that's true. There's being an extreme sometimes is always kind of like, oh, be careful there. But so it's always finding the middle ground. That's, I guess, the healthier place to be. So I think, just for me, I think I definitely actually prefer being on my own. I'm comfortable being on my own. So at a younger age, I had to push myself to be in social situations where now I feel comfortable with it. So, but I can also sit there with my own thoughts happily. But I can also be happy with other people. So, it's just finding like a middle ground.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd just say, you know, being able to identify that as well. If you do, I guess, find yourself not fearing but feeling very uncomfortable being alone, I think that can also be something, not say you should explore, but maybe it could also be highlighting that maybe, you know, something's there. I don't know. Cool. So also just good, we want to bring in some facts and highlight some stuff. So the causes of loneliness, a few here. We'd mentioned already: physical distance, grief and loss, breakup or divorce, mental ill health, you know, depression, low mood, social anxiety can lead to someone feeling a bit lonely or quite lonely and isolated, and then low self-esteem as well. Similar, kind of relating to low mood, depression, because you won't feel comfortable being around other people, you worry, being social anxious in social situations. And then some risk factors, we can look at them: biological, psychological and socials. There's one I will come to you on, Lynn, because I think like you will speak to this quite well.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the risk factors, demographics, so it can be age, gender, social stress,
Mm-hmm.
or social class. As we, found out, some people, I think 18 to 24-year-olds last week, in the last episode, we saw that more people were quite stressed because they were young.
Mm-hmm.
Age usually has a factor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then depression, substance misuse can be a risk factor, feeling isolated because, maybe you're engaging in substance misuse, drinking a lot, taking substances. It can leave you to feel isolated from people. Community and location, again, where you live, I guess that's also quite physical and demographics. You could be in a place where you don't know anybody, or you could be in a location where there's no one else around for miles, or that kind of thing. And then racism and discrimination. You could be in a workplace where you feel on your own because people are treating you are discriminating against you. And then financial hardship, that can lead to loneliness. And I think it would be really good to kind of talk about the relationship between finances and loneliness, because I think that's quite a key one.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think the idea behind Roots to Fruits is to link kind of your finances with any mental health issues, and I feel like money plays a big part, right, in society. You being able to go out for brunches, you being able to just kind of do stuff outside of the home. You need finances to be able to do that. Enough disposable income. So when there's lack of, then that will affect kind of the social aspect of things. And then there's also kind of maybe another flip side in terms of if you're worried about your finances, then you really don't feel social. Maybe you don't even want to kind of do anything with people. You can't talk to other people that you look around and they don't seem like they're struggling. So you might start to feel like you can't connect, is the word we were using. You can't relate to the people around you because they seem to be managing, but you're not. And that's because of finances. So it's a massive key factor, and I think it needs to be highlighted more in terms of what's the solution to that. I guess that's then flipping to trying to look after finances. I know it's really hard now though because the cost of living is going up, and but wages aren't rising enough. So there's so much at play, but at the same time, just trying to get your financial wellness up to scratch will help with kind of the other aspect. So I can really see how it is linked. And I guess that's the whole point for Roots to Fruit, to find those links and being able to kind of try and address them and have people kind of identify the links.
Really, really true, yeah. Okay, so one interesting thing that I read recently, there's a book called Lost Connections by Johan Hari, and he talks about kind of the mental health, mainly depression and anxiety, based on his own experiences. So he wrote this book where he kind of wanted to understand what about our lives and our society right now can lead to depression and anxiety. And one of the things that he looked at was disconnect from others. And in that, he kind of brought up something which I thought would be really interesting. He talks about the evolutionary theory of loneliness. And I just think, I remember reading it, and I texted my friend, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting, because it's a different way of thinking about it, and it's a different way of looking at it. So in this, Johan basically says, just like, we go back to our ancestors. So we talk about the hunter-gatherers, way back in the savannas in Africa. We had our ancestors who are still a part of us today, basically. So some of our natural reactions are based on how our ancestors needed to survive. So he talks about basic instincts or aversive reactions. For example, if you're hungry, or he says food, if you need food, or the key thing that you need for survival is food. You feel hunger, and then that kind of the aversive action or the aversive signal is hunger, and then it makes you want to eat because you know that actually I need to eat in order to survive or to eat food. So the other key for survival is to act together as social species, which is basically to be part of a tribe. We are social beings, we're part of a tribe, we need to be in a tribe. Naturally, as much as we do want to we can want our own time, our personal time, and as much as we're not together physically, we still need a tribe in some sense. So he says the aversive signal, when we are disconnected from a tribe or disconnected from others, is the feeling of loneliness, which can kind of come up as a little bit anxious, a little bit alert, hyper alertness, because you feel something is off, something is wrong. And the reason for that is because I guess our ancestors needed each other to survive. So in order to have food, you needed the hunters and the gatherers. You needed the ones that go out, bring the food back, the ones that cut up the food, serve it to everybody. Also, if you got sick, you couldn't look after yourself, you needed somebody to look after you. So he's basically saying being around other people is a basic instinct, it's a human instinct. It takes us back to survival, we needed it for survival. So when we feel lonely, it's an aversive signal that we need to be reconnected with our tribe. So I guess the reason that was key is because it's also talking about being aware. So when you feel certain things, when you feel hungry, you know that you need to go to the cupboard, look for some food, and if you have the resources, you can go and get food, make food. Thirst, you go, you make yourself a drink, get some water, and you drink it. So why is it that when we feel lonely, we can't act on it or try and get reconnected sometimes? I think it's about, if you look at it that way, that's why it was so mind-blowing for me, because it was almost like it's a basic need. If I can feel that something is not right, that I feel a bit disconnected, I feel a bit off, I feel all of these things, I then do something about it and I can act on it. So I just thought that was quite interesting to kind of like help people to see it in that way. Because I think
really understand kind of where what I feel like a lot of people love exploring why we do what we do, why we feel the way we feel, just a bit of a reason as to why we are who we are. And that's a really good theory, and it really makes sense. Kind of like feeling part of a community comes from survival, which is so true. And I don't know about you, but that when you meet with your friends that you haven't seen for a few weeks, months, whatever, and then you connect, and then you just feel like, I feel so nice after I seen my friend, and there's something there. It's just feeling that sense of belonging, which at some stage it was about survival, but now I think it's about even like refreshing your mental state. So
definitely. And again, sense of belonging.
Yes.
I know we kind of talked about Maslow. That's one of the one of the elements in the, do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit? Yeah, so you said, speaking about kind of sense of belonging, I think that's also quite key. Because again, Maslow, I think both of us, we'd said we do kind of love a bit of Maslow's theory, because it's a nice visual, you can look at it and it kind of makes sense. It definitely makes sense to me anyway. I think you said the same.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and you can relate to quite a lot of aspects. Whatever you can relate, like in terms of finances, in terms of motivation, in terms of, there's a lot of ways that you can relate.
Definitely. So I guess in kind of relation to loneliness, how I see it is obviously you see the different levels. Maslow kind of identifies 5 levels. You've got the physiological needs. It's kind of supporting what we're saying about the evolutionary theory, that it's a basic instinct or it's a basic need to be around other people. So he says, your physiological needs or your basic needs are, food, water, sleep, that kind of thing. And then you've got your safety needs, which are, having personal security, employment, because, if you're in employment, you can afford to, have a living and to survive and to, have all the other resources you need. And then the third line up will be love and belonging. So he actually feels that that's a need in its own in order to satisfy to get to the point where you're self-actualized, where you're a whole being. And in that, he kind of talks about needing to be with family, having some need for intimacy, whether it's, you know, romantic relationship as well as intimacy, feeling connected to family, friends, colleagues as well. I think in the workplace, also important to feel connected to people. You don't want to feel lonely, and in the workplace it can be hard. We spend a lot of time at work. And also having a sense of connection. So he also supports that idea that human beings need that sense of connection. It's a basic need, or it's a need that enables us to be fulfilled human beings. So if you don't have love and belonging, or if you don't feel connected to other people, according to Maslow, you can't go on to the next stage, which is esteem. Esteem is feeling important, feeling valued, you know, the feelings of, you know, status and community. If you don't have a connection to other people, if you feel disconnected and feel lonely, again, we'd said about low self-esteem, your self-esteem will be low, and you can't, you know, you don't feel fulfilled in that way, and therefore you can't get to the top of that triangle where you're self-actualized. And being self-actualized, according to Maslow, is being the best you can be and essentially living your truth and living life the way you, in a way where you feel fulfilled, you feel like you're living according to your purpose, and you feel aligned with who you are, and you don't feel that fuzziness or that lost about life. So lonely, being connected to other people and feeling lonely can effectively break that chain and kind of prevent you from achieving that feeling of fulfillment. So again, reiterates why it's so important to identify, and then once identified, do what you can to kind of reconnect to people. I think I think that's important.
It really is. And I like the way that you kind of linked it, and the way that it evolves in terms of seeing it as a human being, why it's important and why we should address it if you don't feel connected to other people. So that was a really good kind of way of having some theory backing up kind of what we're talking about. So I'm sure a lot of people will relate, or I'm sure a lot of people will be like, oh, okay, that's why it's important. So that was good.
So again, I think it's good to have some takeaways. We've already got a few that we've picked up. So what are your key kind of I guess suggestions for people? What's worked for you? And then again, some key takeaways from this conversation.
I think the key thing I'll say is just the one, and I know I keep saying kind of communication, but in terms of people that find it really hard to be able to communicate, there's so many resources now, especially if you're watching this from the UK. There's a lot of free resources where there are professionals that you can talk to about anything, and it's free. So just kind of look into that, because they specialize in being able to talk to certain people about certain things. So that's my biggest key takeaway that I can give to people. Just open up, find the right person to open up to.
Oh, I like that. I think similar to you, Lynn, I think it's just being able to, I guess the key takeaway again is being able to identify it, like you said, understanding, having an understanding, being in tune. And I always say this, I think I said it in the last episode, being in tune with yourself as much as you can. If you feel something, it's usually an indicator. Your body is telling you something. This is how our bodies work. And, you know, it's being able to identify that physically, mentally, spiritually as well. So identifying it, and then again, a practical tool that you can use. Again, I think probably you said kind of using resources that are out there. I think it would be just trying to connect to people, to somebody. It's easier said than done, but I think it doesn't always have to be somebody that you know, as in like they have to be your best friend. It can just be somebody that you feel is willing to listen, or you could meet somebody and you feel like, oh, they're a cool person, let me just talk to them, get to know them. You never know, you might end up building a connection that enables you to feel, satisfied and connected to them. So definitely put yourself out there a little bit if you can. If you're feeling a little, lacking confidence in doing that, I guess it's about even just, smiling at people, just making yourself open to being approached and to talking to people. I think that can help as well, to help you kind of start building relationships really, or reconnecting with those that you already have. And then icebreaker, we always like to end with an icebreaker. So Lynn doesn't know this one, so
it's my turn now.
It's her turn to be on the spot. So, right, what is one thing that you are grateful for that has happened? I was gonna say in the last week, but that's a bit tough. But recently,
yes.
And why are you grateful?
Ooh. Gratitude is very important, and the biggest thing, always grateful for life, right? But you always feel more grateful when something's been given to you that's not been there before. So I'm trying to think what I can say, like the one thing that I've been grateful for, and I think, why am I pausing? I've got so much to be grateful for.
Maybe you have too much.
I've got so much to be grateful for. Good health, great family that loves me. Something I'm grateful for is my brother's moved to London. So I'm grateful that he's really close.
Oh, that's great. And we don't even need a wife for that.
Yeah.
It just is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have one?
Yeah, actually. I am grateful for a recent retreat that I went on that you recommended, actually.
Yes.
It was a yoga retreat. It was fun. It was something I didn't actually think of doing, because we'd said, talked about yoga before, and I really enjoyed it. I think when I came back, I felt renewed, I felt refreshed, I felt very stretched out, flexible, less tense, just overall good. And it's actually helped me in terms of kind of like getting my yoga routine back. So now in the mornings I practice a bit more, which is really good. So I think I needed that without realizing I needed it. So I'm really grateful that you shared that advice with me, and that I enjoyed it, and it's been great. So thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We really appreciate your support with this. We appreciate your engagement, and we really encourage you to share if you have any other topics you want to talk about, because this is a space where we just talk about everything. We say nothing is off bounds. We want to talk about the hard topics, we want to talk about the good topics. So make your suggestions, follow us on social media. We're going to put our details down there in the description, and we'll see you next time. And share any thoughts before. We look forward to hearing them, and we look forward to seeing you guys later.